What's going on, folks? Ted from Nerd Immersion here, and it's May 18th, so that means Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft is officially available in the wild for you to go out and purchase. Whether that be through Amazon, your friendly local game store, or stores like Barnes & Noble, you should be able to go get it now if it wasn't already on store shelves. It'll retail for $49.95 as per usual. Usually get that a little bit cheaper on Amazon. There'll be an affiliate link in the description. And if you're looking for the alt art cover, unfortunately, that's typically locked behind friendly local game stores if you happen to have one near you and they're able to get them in stock. I'll be setting up my giveaway in the coming days, so stay tuned to the social media and here on YouTube, where I'll be giving away typically at least one copy of the limited edition cover and the standard edition cover, maybe more of these if I can find more. So, as per usual here on Nerd Immersion, we're going to roll into our Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft coverage, where we'll do somewhere in the realm of around 10 videos covering all of the new stuff. The monsters, the subclasses, the lineages, which would normally be races, but these are a little bit different, the dark gifts and new mechanics and stuff like that. So before we dive into the lineages, which is what's going to be covered in this, originally the Gothic Lineages from the Unearthed Arcana, I wanted to talk to you about the sponsor for today's video, the DMs Guild. So if you're familiar with D&D 5e, you probably know about the DMs Guild. It's been around for a while, and it's one of the biggest and most notable sources of homebrew or fan-created content for Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. I shouldn't say homebrew because technically this is published content that's available for purchase or in some instances for free. So let's go ahead and take a look, because if you don't know, you can sort by the setting. So if you see down here, I went to setting and I set it to Ravenloft, and this is going to give me everything that's been tagged for Ravenloft. And I'll leave a link in the description to this kind of saved search. But this will give you anything that's associated with Ravenloft. So this will give you all of the older edition stuff, as you can see here, as well as community-created content for 5th edition. As you can see, Van Richten's Labyrinth of Lineages, Beyond Van Richten's Guide, and so on. So if I click on these, I can go ahead and pick it up, and you can see when it was added to the catalog. Looks like most of them were added on May 17th. And speaking of May 17th, the DMs Guild was kind enough to give me a coupon code that I can use that I'll have in the description. I'll display it on screen for all of you to get a little bit off of your purchases for Ravenloft related content. So it is coupon code DMG Ravenloft, all one word, no spaces, so DMG Ravenloft. And that will get you 10% off an order of $10 or $10 or more dollars for anything through the end of May that uses the content filter of Ravenloft. So basically anything that you find within here and was published by 5/17 will be eligible. So I'll remind you, it's tagged for Ravenloft and published by 5/17 is eligible. So if something doesn't fall within that window and you go to use the coupon code and it doesn't work, that is why. So if we go and look at this, we can see published May 17th, all set to go. So again, it is DMG Ravenloft is the coupon code for 10% off an order of $10 or more. Thank you to the DMs Guild for sponsoring this video. We're going to see more of them in coming videos as well. So right here, you can see I'm on D&D Beyond, and I'm under the Lineages section of Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft. As I previously stated, we received this in the Unearthed Arcana, what was called the Gothic Lineages, and this one was probably the shortest turnaround time we had from an Unearthed Arcana to a published source, but it was not it was long enough, rather, to make edits to them. The edits, I think, are substantial. I think they're all in the right direction, and I don't think it's enough to really warrant a true side-by-side comparison. I think most of them are memorable enough that I could just do it from memory, and that'll make for a quicker video. So what I like about this is they're really embracing the fact that this is something you don't necessarily need to have at character creation. This could be something you acquire through the course of your adventure. And again, in Ravenloft, that seems more than likely that you would acquire vampirism or some form of it in Ravenloft than you would realistically anywhere else. So it says what happened to me here in this little sidebar. These lineages provided in this section represent a physical and magical transformation that alters you in fundamental ways. You can still appear the way you were, but you've been changed in significant ways that overwrite your once physical or magical capabilities. And that's important because for the most part, what you were before, as far as abilities and things, has been lost. And we've seen things similar to this in older editions. I've constantly been quoted as talking about the Dragonborn of Bahamut from older editions, and that was sort of a thing. You underwent, that was a transformation that you willingly underwent to change your race to become this Dragonborn, but you still, like, if you were an elf that became a Dragonborn, you had elvish features, but you were still a Dragonborn. You retained a little bit of your original, race, but you changed to this new one. So this has been a contentious issue. I'm just going to present it as it is. Creating your character. At first level, you choose whether your character is a member of a human race or a fantastical race. So choose your race of any kind. Alternatively, you can choose a lineage here instead. So you could start, again, a character creation with one of these lineages, or you could acquire it through the course of the adventure. How do you determine your ability scores when you are using one of these lineages, again, at level 1 or later on? When determining your ability scores, you can increase one of those scores by 2 and a different one by 1, which is pretty standard, or you can increase 3 scores by 1. We really have only seen this, I think, in the Triton was the only race that had +1 to 3 stats. You follow, this is important here, you follow this rule regardless of the method you use to determine the scores, such as rolling your point by. And it says, your class's quick build will offer suggestions of scores to increase. There's not a specific set to increase for a Dhampir versus a Hexblood versus a Reborn. They're saying look at what your class recommends you have better. If you're a sorcerer, it's going to say you should have Charisma and Constitution. Put your points in Charisma and Constitution. It says if you are replacing your race with a lineage, replace any ability score increases you previously had. So if you were a Wood Elf, which traditionally gives you a +2 Dexterity, +1 Wisdom, and you're going to be a Wood Elf Dhampir, you replace the +2 Dex +1 Wisdom with either +2, +1 to any 2 ability scores of your choice, or increase 3 by 1. Okay, and then languages, your character can speak, read, and write Common or another language of your choice that the DM agrees is appropriate for the character. So the Dhampir, here it is. You are considered humanoid. You are medium or small size. You choose this when you choose the lineage. You gain a walking speed of 35 feet, and the big change here is Ancestral Legacy. All 3 of these have this ability, and I think it's really nice. If you replace a race with this lineage, you can keep the following elements of that original race. Any skill proficiencies you gained from it, any climbing, flying, or swimming speed you gained from it. If you don't keep any of those, or you choose this lineage at character creation, you gain proficiency in 2 skills of your choice. So for example, let's say you wanted to be an Aarakocra Dhampir. You could keep your flying speed of an Aarakocra of 50 feet. Your walking speed would then become 35 feet. You'd get dark vision and these other abilities, but you retain the flying speed of the Aarakocra. If you choose to forego keeping any of your original features, you get 2 skill proficiencies of your choice. So ideally, the best one if you're trying to metagame this and get the most bang for your buck would be something that provided you skill proficiencies and a climbing, flying, or swimming speed, or if you could get both or multiple skill proficiencies. One that jumps out to me would be a Tabaxi. Tabaxi gets 2 skill proficiencies and a climb speed. However, it's not as important for a climb speed on a Dhampir as they can eventually climb walls. So if we scroll down, dark vision out to 60 feet, you don't need to breathe, and then you get the spider climb ability here. You have a climbing speed equal to your walking speed, which is 35 feet. In addition, at 3rd level, you can move up, down, and across vertical surfaces and upside down along ceilings while leaving your hands free. So again, in this particular instance, it wouldn't make a lot of sense to choose Tabaxi because you could get a climb speed, I think, of 20 feet or get one equal to your walking speed, which is 35. So, but there's ways you could maybe finagle this, and if your DM has homebrew races, you could maybe work on that. And then you have the Vampiric Bite. Now, this was clarified, and I want to show you all the clarification, right? Your fangs is a natural weapon, which counts as a simple melee weapon with which you are proficient. So yes, the ability to smite with your fangs is still there, however, there's a difference. It says you add your Constitution modifier instead of your Strength modifier to the attack and damage rolls when you attack with this bite. Previously, it said you add your Constitution modifier to the attack and damage rolls in the Unearthed Arcana. It didn't have this instead of Strength, which, in theory, rules as written meant it would be Strength plus Constitution. My only complaint here is you add Constitution instead of Strength. It's not you can add Constitution instead of Strength. So regardless, even if you're super strong but really weak constitution-wise, your bite is still going to be based off of that. So that's the only thing. I would have liked to seen you to have the option to use strength or constitution, but instead is purely constitution based for attack and damage rolls. It deals a d4 piercing damage on hit, and while you are missing half or more of your hit points, you have advantage on any attack rolls you make with this bite, which is nice. When you attack with this bite and hit a creature that isn't a construct or undead, you can empower yourself in one of the following ways. You regain hit points equal to the piercing damage dealt by the bite. That's important because originally it said you gained, I think it originally said you regain hit points equal to the damage dealt by the bite, which would have allowed someone who was, say, doing smite, paladin smite biting, you would heal also all the radiant damage. They changed that to specifically quantify that it's only the piercing damage, so only that d4 plus your constitution modifier. Or you gain a bonus to the next ability check or attack roll you make, and the bonus equals the piercing damage dealt by the bite, which is interesting because that could potentially be if you have a 20 constitution and you roll a 4 on your d4, you could be adding +9 to the next ability check or attack roll you make. And again, if you crit, you could deal double that damage, so 2d4 plus your constitution modifier, potentially giving you more heals or potentially giving you more bonus to whatever the roll is. And you can do this a number of times equal to your proficiency bonus times per long rest. So pretty much every class needs constitution, which is, something that's sort of beneficial here. And you have this, you might not ever use the bite, but it's a nice thing to have in a back pocket. It's slightly better than attacking unarmed. And it has a couple of other benefits. And you have the benefit, again, of advantage on attack rolls when you have half or more of your hit points missing, which even though you might not be able to heal all of this extra stuff, if you're, say, smiting as a paladin with this bite, you do have advantage under half, which potentially could allow you to crit more often, which could allow you to crit and deal a whole bunch of radiant damage. I think that's hilarious. I think it's really funny to be a vampire biting someone with the power of some sort of oath or divine being infusing radiant damage through your vampire or Dhampir fangs, which I think is pretty great. But I really like this, and I really think the ancestral legacy is super useful. It also really helps for anybody who wants to try to build templates or things like this, replacement features for people in a game. It gives us a nice template to use. For example, I referenced the Dragonborn from 3rd edition in the previous or earlier in the video. That would be something that I would use as well. So if we move down, we have next up is the Hexblood, which has some pretty interesting changes. Again, the Origins got a couple changes there. And then we have You Are Fey. Originally, it was dual typing Fey humanoid. They dropped the humanoid and you are just to be considered a Fey, which is, again, interesting and a benefit because things like Charm Person and Hold Person and stuff like that that would only work on humanoids don't work on Fey. So you would be able to avoid those entirely, which is pretty interesting because most charm effects, most of them anyway, affect humanoids only. Hold Person, Charm Person. Yeah, I don't know if I don't think Suggestion is one of them, but again, the ones that specifically reference Person, Dominate Person, all those things. You are medium or small. You choose when you gain this lineage. You get a walking speed of 30 feet. You once again retain that ancestral legacy feat that we feature. Which again, this instance, say you were a Tabaxi Hexblood, you would have your Tabaxi climbing speed plus the 2 skill proficiencies provided by being a Tabaxi, and the Hexblood doesn't normally get a climb speed, so that will be a huge benefit to you. Dark Vision as well here, out to 60 feet. You get the Eerie token as a bonus action. You can harmlessly remove a lock of your hair, one of your nails, or one of your teeth. It's imbued with magic until you finish a long rest. And while it is imbued in this way, you can take one of the following actions. They cleaned this up a little bit so it reads a little cleaner. Telepathic Message. As an action, you can send a telepathic message to the creature holding or carrying the token. As long as you're within 10 miles of it, it can contain up to 25 words. It doesn't allow you them to respond back, so it's basically a one-way sending with a range of 10 miles. Or remote viewing. If you are within 10 miles of the token, you can enter a trance as an action. It lasts for a minute, but ends early if you dismiss it with no action. During this trance, you can see and hear from the token as if you were located where it is. While you are using your senses at the token's location, you are blinded and deafened. When the trance ends, the token harmlessly is destroyed, and you could do this either one of those options. It looks like once a long rest. Once you create a token using this feature, you can't do so again until you finish a long rest. Oh, It's just in general. So once you use one of these abilities, it's just once per long rest. And additionally, you have Hex magic. You can cast Disguise Self and the Hex spells with this. Once you cast either one, you can't do it until you finish a long rest. But the super important qualifier here, you can also cast these spells using any spell slots you have, and you choose Intelligence, Wisdom, or Charisma as the spellcasting ability when you choose this lineage. So importantly there is Disguise Self and Hex are actually both very useful spells. Disguise Self has a ton of social applications, hiding and things like that. And Hex is a great damage dealing and potential debuff depending on the scenario. And there are certain classes that just don't have access to Hex. Most classes, in fact, don't. This could be an interesting way to get a Hex on something like a Paladin or, maybe a Ranger. Again, as long as you have spell slots in which to cast, you can cast Hex, and it's provided by your race, and you'd always have it. If you're a Swashbuckler, or Bladesinger rather, you'd have that as an option, or even, because you'd have spell slots, but you could, again, take this on something like a Swashbuckler or a Fighter and just have that one Hex per long rest. But if you happen to have access to spell slots, this is just that much better. And then lastly, we have the Reborn, which was sort of the construct, Frankenstein monster, revenant style thing. And we got, once again, they are humanoid. They're originally, I think, either humanoid and either undead or construct. They're just down to humanoid here. They have medium or small size, pretty much as all of these have had. Speed is only 30 feet. They have the Ancestral Legacy feature that we've talked about before. And then you have Deathless Nature. You have advantage on saving throws against disease and being poisoned, and have resistance to poison damage. Advantage on death saving throws. You don't need to eat, drink, or breathe, and you don't need to sleep. Magic can't put you to sleep. You can finish a long rest in 4 hours if you spend those hours in an inactive, motionless state during which you retain consciousness. So you essentially get access to almost like the Elves Trance ability, except you are, conscious. You just power down, essentially. And then you also have knowledge from a past life. You temporarily remember glimpses of the past, perhaps faded memories from ages ago or a previous life. When you make an ability check that uses a skill, you can roll a d6 immediately after seeing the number on the d20 and add the number to the d6 to the check. You can use this feature a number of times equal to your proficiency bonus times per long rest. Now, I don't remember originally what the Reborn had, but this is essentially giving you a bardic inspiration, but it's only an ability check that uses a skill, which is a really specific thing. So that means you can't add it to initiative, because like initiative is an ability check, but is not an ability check that uses a skill. It also means you can't use it on any tool proficiencies, because they don't necessarily use a skill, they use the tool proficiency. So that seems like kind of a weird one to me. Honestly, if I was going to have someone who's going to play this in my game, I would tweak it and say when you make an ability check, honestly, I'd give you the full thing. I'd say when you make an ability check, an attack roll, or a saving throw, you can roll a d6 immediately after seeing the number on the d20 and add a d6 to the check, right? It's proficiency bonus times per long rest. It starts off at 2. It's going to be at most 6 later on in the game. And it's always a d6 that never changes. I mean, it does technically stack with Bardic Inspiration, but it's also only you. You can't give this to somebody else. So I don't see what the reasoning of just limiting it to only an ability check. It's from a past life. Your past lives could have been good at saving throws or attacks. I don't know. It just doesn't make a lot of sense to me to limit it in such a way. So having said that and gone through all of these, the one that I like the most by and far is the Dhampir. I think that really does a good job. I don't particularly love the art for this one. I think that one's kind of funky. But I love this art. I think this art looks fantastic. But I think this one, this is definitely one I could see myself playing, right? 35-foot walking speed, the nice little bit of extra, especially if you're going to play a race that gives you extra movement speed, or a class that gives you extra movement speed, that's nice. The Ancestral Legacy, I mean, at the very least, it's 2 skill proficiencies, right? If you're not going to try to do anything with, walking speed or climbing speed. Actually, it is not walking speed. It's just climbing, flying, or swimming. You get a climbing speed as a Dhampir, so that one's kind of, again, useless. But if you wanted to have swimming speed or access to a flying speed, that could be pretty nice. Again, like I said, you could be a Aarakocra Dhampir, which our hooker don't typically have dark vision, but you now would, and you'd have a 50-foot fly speed. You'd also be able to climb things, which is kind of redundant if you can fly, but you don't need to breathe. That's quantified here, so you can essentially avoid any sort of inhaled scenarios. You can go underwater, which you don't necessarily have a swim speed, but you can't drown, or you could be in a an area devoid of oxygen. And again, the spider walking I think is really cool. I think this should be a really cool option for like a rogue or something where you can climb up and down on all the walls. Plus, it kind of frees up the need to use boots of spider climbing, so you can basically get that that slot back, that magic item attunement slot. And depending on how you build out your character, your vampiric bite could be very useful and could be almost a sole part of your character if you wanted to use this as a paladin, like I had said. Or it could just be a fun thing you have in the back pocket just in case you need it. I do like that the Hexblood is Fey. I like that we are seeing, this is I think the third race that we've seen that deviates from the standard you are humanoid. We've had satyrs, centaurs, and now Hexblood. So I'd like to see, I'm hoping whenever the Dragonlance book or whatever the dragon version is, maybe they have an option where you are not a humanoid, you are a dragon. That would be pretty cool. Again, the only downside to that is being a dragon means that you are affected by things like a dragon slaying arrow or a dragon slayer longsword, because being a dragon doesn't provide you any specific benefits other than the things that specifically say they deal more damage to dragons. So anyway, folks, that is it for the lineages. This went a little bit longer, but I wanted to go through and touch on the sort of the intro bit about the how to create a, choosing your ability scores and stuff like that, because now that that's there and it's out of the way, we don't need to do that going forward, because the way it seems all races and lineages and whatever they are going forward, they will be like that. You can choose +2, +1, or +1 to 3, and that whole how languages work and all that will be a standard thing we see going forward. So we've discussed that here now. And let me know in the comments down below, which is your favorite of the lineages? Did these changes change your opinion on them? They definitely did for me. I thought they were kind of throwaway and there was no way I would play them. And now with a character that I'm making for an upcoming game, I'm seriously considering playing a Dhampir because I really like it. And I am planning on playing, like, if I'm going to play this character, play a ranged character, which would make use of the spider climb. So again, thank you all so much for watching. Thank you to the DMs Guild for sponsoring this video. And I will see you in the next video. We'll be talking about the 2 subclasses in this book.